If you're into ghostly horror tales, get ready. Stories of haunted places, strange presences, and events that defy any explanation. Experiences that will send shivers down your spine. Like the story you're about to see, where a couple moves into an apartment. That used to be a prison. And soon they start hearing footsteps, doors opening by themselves, and even creepy messages appearing on the walls. But before we dive into the story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying tales. I swear I heard the bedroom doorknob turning that night. A low click, almost imperceptible, followed by the slow creak of the door opening. My wife, Sarah, was sound asleep beside me. But me? I was wide awake, every muscle in my body tense. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of silence that seems to fill your ears with a buzz. And then, footsteps. Light, dragging as if someone was tiptoeing down the hallway. We had moved into that apartment in northern England 2 weeks earlier. It was cheap, spacious, and had an old charm. Rare around there. What the realtor didn't mention was that the building had been a prison in the 19th century. "Oh, it's just a historical detail," he said, as if the ghosts of prisoners were just a tourist curiosity. The first few nights, everything seemed normal. Then the sounds started, always at the same time. 3:17 a.m. First, it was just the sound of doors creaking, as if someone was moving around the apartment. I'd get up, check every corner, even look under the bed like a scared child. Nothing. Sarah said it was the building settling old stuff, you know? But I know the sound of an old place, and that wasn't wood adjusting. It was something or someone walking. One night, I decided to stay awake. I grabbed my phone, turned on the voice recorder, and left it on the nightstand. If it was my imagination, at least I'd have proof. I lay there listening to the ticking of the clock in the living room until... click. The bedroom door opened by itself again. This time, I saw it. The doorknob lowered slowly, as if an invisible hand was pressing it down. My heart raced. Sarah kept sleeping, but I couldn't move. The air turned icy the way it does when you enter a damp basement. And then, the footsteps started getting closer. They stopped beside the bed, as if whoever was there was staring at me. The next day, I listened to the recording. My own ragged breathing, the creaking door, and a whisper. So low it was almost inaudible, but unmistakable. "Plead for me." I deleted the file right away. Sarah found me pale, trembling, and when I told her, she got serious. "We have to get out of here," she said. But we didn't have the money for another move so soon. 3 nights later, the worst happened. I was almost asleep when I heard a snap from the living room. This time, Sarah woke up too. "What was that?" she whispered. Before I could answer, the bedroom light flickered and went out. The door, which I had locked, started shaking, as if something was pounding on it from the inside. Bang, 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 Sarah screamed. I jumped out of bed, pressed my weight against the door, feeling each hit vibrate through my back. And then, silence. When the lights came back on, the wall behind the bed was different. Dirty marks, as if someone had dragged their fingers through the paint, formed words. "Cannot." Sarah started crying. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and called the only person who might know what to do. My mom. She's always had this gift, you know. That sensitivity to things most people don't see. As soon as she answered, before I could say anything, she blurted out, "You're in danger. Get out of there now." But the night wasn't over yet. My mom didn't need to say it twice. While Sarah threw clothes into a backpack, I stared at the wall, where the letters seemed to be darkening, as if something was pulling the paint back into that damned wall. The air smelled of mold and something else, metallic, like dried blood. "Let's go now," I yelled, pulling Sarah by the arm. She was trembling, her eyes filled with tears. Before we left, my mom had told me to pray, even though I wasn't very religious. So as we ran to the car, I muttered whatever came to mind. "Our Father," "Hail Mary," even a desperate "please, please." The car didn't start right away. The engine just made that choking sound, and I almost punched the steering wheel. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Look." She pointed to the rearview mirror. Up in our apartment, on the 3rd floor, the bedroom light was on, and the silhouette of someone, or something, was standing at the window, watching us. The engine finally started. I sped off, nearly hitting a pole. I didn't look back again. My mom's house was an hour away, but it felt like an eternity. Sarah wouldn't stop crying. I felt something wrong clinging to me, as if they had stuck a tube in my chest and sucked out half my energy. My vision blurred and my hands were cold and sweaty on the steering wheel. When we arrived, my mom was already at the door, holding a crucifix in one hand and a glass of salt water in the other. "Get inside, quick," she ordered. As soon as we crossed the threshold, she threw the salt water on us, as if washing away something invisible. Sarah jumped, but I just felt immediate relief, as if a ton of weight had lifted off my back. "What was that?" I asked, still breathless. My mom didn't answer right away. She lit a white candle, placed a handful of herbs on a plate, and burned them, letting the thick smoke fill the room. The smell was strong, bitter, but somehow calming. "Someone died in that apartment," she finally said, "and it wasn't natural. It's trapped there and now it's hungry." Sarah swallowed hard. Hungry, hun, for what? For fear, for energy, for life. My mom looked at me and I saw a mix of pity and concern in her eyes. "It's already started feeding on you." I remembered the weakness, the blurred vision, that draining sensation. My stomach turned. That night we slept in the guest room, with blessed candles in each corner. My mom prayed aloud, words in Latin that I didn't understand, but they seemed to work. The air felt lighter, and for the first time in weeks, I could take a deep breath without feeling like something was watching me. But in the middle of the night, I woke with a start. Someone was tapping on the window, tap, tap, tap. Slowly, I turned my head. Outside, staring at me with eyes that didn't reflect the streetlight, was it? The same silhouette from the apartment. The mouth opened into a wide, impossibly wide smile, and a voice whispered, clear as if it was inside my ear, "You cannot escape." Sarah woke up screaming. The candles went out all at once, and on the window glass, scratched as if someone had dragged a nail, were the words, "Come back." My mom rushed in, holding a rosary. "It's stronger than I thought," she admitted, her voice trembling. "We need help." The next morning I called a priest, a ghost hunter, even a psychiatrist, because I started doubting my own sanity. But one thing I knew, that wasn't my imagination. And if we didn't find a way to stop that thing, it was going to get us. Creepy, huh? I really want to know what you thought of the story. Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Yeah, just when you think you've seen it all, something even more disturbing comes along, like in the story you're about to hear, where a simple shift change turned into a real nightmare. I'll never forget the sound of that voice. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. When Father Callahan first played the recording for me, my blood ran cold. It was Luke, a 7-year-old boy, saying things no child should know. Twisted words, in dead languages, whispered as if someone was right behind him, breathing down his neck. And the worst part? In the background of the recording you could hear another voice, a hoarse, ragged thing that didn't come from his mouth. I met Father Callahan 2 years earlier when he sought me out after a complicated exorcism. I've always had one foot on the other side, so to speak. Since I was a kid, I've seen things others couldn't. Shadows in the corners of my eyes, figures that vanished when I turned my head. Over time, I learned to deal with it, to use this damn gift to help. And that's how I got involved in this case. Luke's parents were desperate. First came the nightmares. He would wake up screaming, saying a tall man with dark eyes stood in the corner of his room watching him sleep. Then came the strange behavior. Luke started talking to himself, answering questions no one had asked. Once his mother found him in the kitchen in the middle of the night, standing on the table, laughing non-stop. When she asked what he was doing, he turned his head at an unnatural angle and said, "I'm waiting for him to come back." Doctors found nothing. Psychiatrists prescribed medications that only made Luke worse. That's when the family turned to the church, and that's when Father Callahan called me. The first time I entered their house, the air was heavy. It wasn't just the smell of incense or burning candles. It was something embedded in the walls, as if the house had absorbed every scream. every moment of terror. Luke was on the sofa, quiet, his eyes glazed over, staring at the ceiling. He seemed normal until you looked closely. His eyes, they didn't focus right, as if he was looking through everything. Father Callahan tried to talk to him, asked his name, his age. Luke responded in a soft, almost childlike voice, but then, out of nowhere, his face changed. His muscles contracted, his mouth twisted into a smile too wide, and his voice, God, his voice became rough. "You brought the girl who sees things," he said, looking straight at me. "She shouldn't be here." I felt a chill run up my spine. He wasn't seeing me. He was seeing something behind me, something I couldn't see yet. Father Callahan didn't waste time. He started the ritual, the prayers in Latin, the holy water. Luke was quiet for a second, and then he exploded. The boy thrashed as if he were being electrocuted, screaming in something that wasn't English, wasn't anything human. He tore the IV from his arm with his teeth, spitting blood and cursed words. His mother fainted. Father Callahan held Luke tightly, but it was as if something much stronger was fighting against us. And then, the lights went out. In the dark, I heard Luke laughing, a low, adult laugh coming from a child's body. When the lights came back on, he was no longer on the sofa. He was standing high on the bookshelf in an impossible corner, looking at us upside down, and his eyes were completely black. That laugh echoed in my head for days. After the first exorcism, Luke got worse, much worse. His parents barely slept because he would stop breathing at night, on purpose just to see them panic. Once his mother swore she saw him climbing the bedroom wall like an insect, his fingers sticking to the plaster as if they had claws. Father Callahan insisted, "We need to try again. This isn't just a possession, it's something older." On the fourth attempt, we prepared better. Coarse salt in the corners, blessed candles, crucifixes on every door. Luke was tied to the bed, but he didn't seem scared. He seemed excited, as if he were waiting for us to fail. The ritual began, and this time, I felt it from the first minute. The air grew heavy, as if someone had placed a brick on my chest. The candles flickered without wind, and Father Callahan's voice seemed distant, even though he was right beside me. That's when Luke started to speak. Not with his voice. Not with just one voice. There were many, men, women, children, all coming from his throat at once, a chorus of moans and laughter. He spoke in languages I had never heard, words that burned like acid. And then he stopped. He looked at me and said, in a voice that was his but not his, "You see us, don't you? We see you too." Before I could react, all the lights in the house went out. This time it wasn't a normal blackout. It was as if something had sucked the light away. I heard Luke's mother scream, Father Callahan praying louder, and then a noise, something dragging on the floor. I turned on my cell phone flashlight and the beam trembled in the direction of the sound. Luke was no longer in bed. He was on the ceiling, on all fours like an animal, his head turned sideways, his eyes completely black. He smiled, too wide, and then jumped. We crashed to the floor together and I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder as he tried to bite my neck. Father Callahan pulled him back, but Luke was too strong. He writhed, his bones cracking, and then, crack, his shoulder dislocated. He didn't even cry. He just laughed. And that's when I saw it. For a second, just a second, a shadow rose behind him. A tall, thin thing with arms too long. It bent over Luke as if protecting him. I screamed without thinking, "Get out of him!" And then, Luke passed out. The house fell silent, but I knew it wasn't over. Because in the hallway mirror, for less than a second, I saw someone behind me, someone who wasn't there when I turned around. I couldn't get that image out of my head, the shadow behind Luke, its thin arms like dry branches wrapping around the boy as if he were a toy. After that day, I knew we weren't dealing with just any spirit. It was something with roots, something that liked to play with us. The seventh exorcism was scheduled for a Thursday, a stormy day. Father Callahan said it was a good sign. Water purifies, Thunder breaks dense energies. But when we arrived at Luke's parents' house, the air was still, heavy, as if the rain were afraid to fall there. Luke was different, pale with deep dark circles under his eyes, but too calm. He sat on the bed, looking at us with a little smile that didn't belong on a 7-year-old boy. "You came back," he said in a voice that was just a hoarse whisper. "He said you would come back." Father Callahan started the prayers, but I could barely pay attention. Because I felt it. Something was in the room with us. Not just in Luke, it was in everything. In the walls, the ceiling, the shadows that stretched further than they should. And then the candles went out. All at once. In the dark, Luke started to laugh. It wasn't his laugh. It was something older, more broken. "You want to see?" His voice came from somewhere in the room, but I knew he hadn't moved. "You want to see who's really here?" Before I could answer, a flash of white light filled the room. Not from the lightning outside, but from within. And for a second, just a second, I saw. It was a tall, too thin figure, with skin stretched tight over its bones as if it had been pulled. The eyes were just deep holes, but I knew it was looking at me. And worse, it was smiling. Luke screamed. Not a scream of fear. It was a scream of pain, as if something were being torn from him. He fell to the floor, writhing, and the shadow above him writhed, its arms twisting like black smoke. Father Callahan didn't stop. He shouted the final words of the exorcism, and then silence. Luke lay still. The shadow was gone. And then he cried. He cried like a child, like a real child. His mother ran and hugged him, and he whispered in a thin, scared voice, "It's dark. I don't want to be in the dark anymore." Father Callahan looked at me, exhausted, but I couldn't celebrate, because in the corner of the room where the shadow had been, the air still shimmered, as if something had left, but not gone. And as we left, I swear I heard a whisper behind me. "Until next time." Luke got better. His parents swore they never saw anything again. But me, I still feel it. Sometimes at night I wake up with the sensation that someone is at the foot of my bed, something that waits, because these things don't go away. They just rest, and they always come back. What a horror. And if you think that was heavy, just wait until you hear what happened in the next story. An experience that started with a strange noise and ended in a way no one can explain to this day. I'll never forget the night my mom dreamed about my funeral, while I sat here in the dark, holding a knife and thinking about ending it all. It was June 24th, 2017, one of those suffocating nights with no wind, no moonlight, just the distant buzz of an insect hitting the street lamp outside. I was in my apartment, sitting on the kitchen floor, leaning against the fridge, with this weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. Life had crushed me in a way that I couldn't get back up. The mounting bills, the job I had lost, the relationship that crumbled, it all felt like a noose tightening around my neck. And then that thought came. You know the one. The one that whispers in your ear when you're at rock bottom. What if I just disappear? My hand closed around the handle of the knife I used for chopping vegetables. It wasn't planned. It was like my body decided for me. And I looked at the blade, staring at my own distorted reflection in it, imagining how easy it would be. But then, something strange happened. I felt a chill. Not the usual nighttime chill, no, it was a coldness that came from within, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. And worse, I had this clear feeling that I wasn't alone. That tiny kitchen, which I knew every inch of, suddenly seemed bigger, too dark in the corners, like something was there, watching, waiting. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks. Then out of nowhere, my phone vibrated on the floor beside me. I nearly jumped. It was my mom. I ignored it. I didn't have the energy to talk to anyone, let alone lie and say I was okay. But she persisted. 2, 3 calls. Finally, on the 4th, I answered. "Son, are you okay?" Her voice was strange, shaky, like she had been crying. "I'm fine, Mom." Why? I forced a normal tone, but my hand was still trembling around the knife. I had a dream. A horrible dream. She paused and I heard her swallow hard. It was a funeral. Everything was dark, people in black, an open casket in the middle of the room. And it was empty. Until you appeared. You walked into it, lay down inside, and I screamed for you to wake up, but you couldn't hear me. The air rushed out of my lungs, because her dream had happened at the same time I was there in the kitchen, staring at the knife and thinking about, well, you know. I ended the call saying it was just a coincidence, that she didn't need to come see me. But she was already on her way, and I stayed there, sitting on the floor, looking at the wall, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. Coincidence? Telepathy? Or something worse? Because now, on top of the weight of depression, I had another certainty. Something that night had tried to pull me to the other side. And my mom somehow had sensed it. But that was just the beginning. Because what came next was what really made me question everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what lies in between. And the worst part? I found out that night wasn't the first time something like that had happened. And it probably wouldn't be the last. My mom arrived at my apartment shortly after the call, her face still marked by fear. She hugged me tight, like I would disappear if she let go. And I let her, because at that moment, that simple human contact was the only thing that made me feel real. While she made some coffee, I stared out the window. The night still dark, but now with a thin mist covering the street. Son, do you believe that sometimes we just know things? She asked, placing the cup in front of me. It's not the first time I've dreamed something and it happened. I didn't answer right away, because the truth is I had always been a skeptic. Ghosts, premonitions, prophetic dreams, it was all nonsense to me. But there, with that chill still clinging to my spine, I couldn't dismiss it so easily. Mom, what else have you dreamed that ended up happening? She hesitated, like she didn't want to scare me even more. But then she told me about a dream she had years ago, when I was a child. She saw a crashed car, a broken pole, and my dad, who had passed away long before, standing in the middle of the street, looking at her. The next day, a distant cousin had an accident exactly like in her dream. Died instantly. I swallowed hard. That wasn't just a guess, it was a pattern. I decided to dig into the internet, looking for similar stories. And that's when I stumbled upon a forum full of accounts from people who had gone through the same thing. Dreams that became real. Telepathic connections in moments of crisis. Sensations of presence when a loved one was in danger. Some called it soul ties, others living ghosts. As if in extreme moments part of us could project to where the people we love are. And then I read something that chilled me. Sometimes when a person is on the brink between life and death, their consciousness can connect with someone they have a strong bond with, even miles away. It's like a silent scream from the soul. That explained my mom's dream. But it also made me think, if I had almost died that night, what exactly did she see? Was it just a dream? Or had she in some way witnessed something that hadn't even happened yet? That's when the apartment darkened. It wasn't a blackout. The streetlights were still on. It was like a shadow had passed through the room, swallowing the light for a second. My mom froze, eyes wide. Did you see that? I didn't need to answer. The look on her face said it all. And then, very softly, came a noise. Something scratching at the hallway door, slowly, like it was trying not to be heard. My mom grabbed my hand tightly. Don't open it. But I already knew we didn't need to open it, because whatever was there was already inside. How bizarre. It's surreal to think that things like this really happen, but believe me, what you're about to hear is even weirder. A situation that made even skeptical people run from that place. But before we continue with the story, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying our stories, so go ahead and hit like to let YouTube know you like this kind of content, and don't miss any more horror stories. I'll never forget the first night in that house in El Paso. The air was heavy, the way only the desert can be, and the silence was so absolute you could hear the hum of the electrical wiring in the walls. We had just moved in, tired from the chaos, when something strange happened. I was alone in the living room organizing some boxes when I heard a chant. It wasn't loud, it wasn't clear, but it was there. It came from the air conditioning vents, as if someone were whispering an old melody from the other side. It sounded like a woman's voice, drawn out, almost as if she were crying while singing. My blood ran cold. I looked up, trying to locate where exactly that sound was coming from. But the more I paid attention, the more it faded, as if it were playing with me. At first, I thought it was the wind, or some sound interference from the house, but it didn't make sense. The windows were closed, there was no TV on, no radio. Just me and that ghostly chant. I decided to ignore it. After all, we always come up with a logical explanation for these things, right? But the house had other plans. In the following days, things started to get strange. I would wake up in the morning and find doors open. Not unlocked, no, open. As if someone had passed through there during the night. The back door, which I always locked with a key, was wide open more than once. My wife swore it was the wind, but I knew it wasn't. Wind doesn't turn doorknobs. And the lights. Oh, the lights were the worst. The bathroom in the hallway had an old switch, the kind that makes a loud click when you turn it on. But in the middle of the night, the light would turn on by itself. I would hear the sound of the switch being activated, click, and there it was, lighting up the empty hallway. The first time it happened, I thought it was a short circuit, but there was no explanation for the light staying on for hours, as if someone were inside. One night I was on the sofa, almost asleep, when the touch-sensitive lamp on the coffee table simply turned on. By itself. I looked at it, disbelieving. It was one of those you need to touch to turn on, not a common switch. And there it was, shining in the dark, as if an invisible hand had passed over it. My heart raced. That wasn't normal. It wasn't a defect. Something or someone was in that house with us. That's when I saw the shadow. It was near my son's bedroom door, a tall figure standing, as if it were looking inside. It had no face, no details. It was just a darker stain than the surrounding darkness. I froze. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. I just stood there staring at that thing until, in the blink of an eye, it disappeared. The next day, I decided to investigate. I asked the neighbors if anything strange had ever happened in that house. An old man looked at me with an air of pity and said, "Ah, you don't know. The former owner died in there. They say she loved to sing." That was it. We were living in a haunted house. But the worst hadn't started yet. After we found out about the former owner of the house, everything started to make sense. But knowing the truth didn't make things less scary. On the contrary, it was as if the woman knew we were aware of her, and that made her more active. My wife, who used to doubt everything, started to feel it too. She woke up in the middle of the night with the clear sensation of someone sitting on the bed, sinking the mattress. When she turned around, there was nothing. Just the void and that cold that seemed to come from within the bones. My son, who was only 8 at the time, started talking about a dark man who stood at the foot of his bed, watching. I wondered if it was the same shadow I had seen. We decided to contact the El Paso Paranormal Society. 2 guys showed up with cameras, recorders, and a bunch of equipment that looked like they came out of a horror movie. They asked questions, walked around the house, and even tried some EVP sessions. Those where you ask questions into the void and wait for an answer. At first, nothing happened, until one of the investigators asked, "Are you here with us?" And the air conditioning turned off. It wasn't a normal shutdown. It was as if someone had yanked the plug from the wall. The silence became heavy, and then that chant returned. This time, clearer. A woman's voice, sad, almost a lament, coming from the vents. Even the investigators turned pale. One of them looked at me and said softly, "This isn't residual, no. She knows you're here." That night was the worst of all. I swear I heard footsteps in the hallway, as if someone were walking in circles, stopping in front of each door. The bathroom lights turned on and off by themselves, and the touch-sensitive lamp in the living room flickered, as if it were being pressed repeatedly. My wife cried in secret, and I didn't have the courage to admit that I was scared too. But what broke me for good was when the shadow appeared again. This time it wasn't just standing there. It moved. I was in the hallway, going to check on my son, when I saw that dark figure come out from behind the bedroom door and come towards me. It had no face, no eyes, but I knew it was staring at me. I backed away, bumped into the wall, and closed my eyes, expecting the worst. When I opened them, there was nothing. The next day, my wife and I made the decision. We can't take it anymore. We have to get out of this house. But I had the feeling that even if we left, that thing wasn't going to let us go so easily. We packed our bags quickly, almost in desperation. We found a house nearby in a quiet neighborhood and signed the contract in record time. But I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. Things like this never are. On our last night in that cursed house, I decided to face whatever was there. I stood alone in the living room in the dark and said aloud, "We are leaving. This house is yours now. Stay here. Don't follow us." The silence that followed was so heavy you could cut it with a knife. Until out of nowhere, the vertical blind on the window began to move by itself. That sound of wood sliding slowly, as if someone were pulling. And then bam! It closed with a bang. My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. That's when I felt it. A cold air passed by me, as if something had come close to my face. And then right in my ear came a hoarse whisper, almost inaudible. "No." I ran out of there and didn't look back. The next day we finally moved. The new house was quiet. No voices, no shadows, no lamps turning on by themselves. But I couldn't relax. I still had the feeling that something was watching me, especially at night. My wife said it was just an impression, trauma from what we had been through. But I knew it wasn't paranoia, until weeks later we discovered something about the former owner of the house. She hadn't died of natural causes. She was murdered. An old neighbor, who didn't want to talk before, ended up telling us. The woman had been found dead in her own bedroom, strangled. The case was never solved. And worse, they said that before she died, she used to hum a lot, especially at night. It was her way of calming herself. When I heard that, everything made sense. The chant, the shadow in the bedroom, the heavy energy we felt. She wasn't haunting the house out of malice. She was trapped there, trapped in that place where something horrible had happened. And now I wondered, was that no I heard a warning or a threat? To this day, when I pass by that street, I feel a chill down my spine. And sometimes, in the silence of the early morning, I swear I still hear a distant chant coming from a place that no longer exists. Or does it? What a horror. What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion here in the comments. The seatbelt was cut, clean, as if someone had done it on purpose. That's what the officer said when he called us after they found my dad's car on that deserted road near York. His voice was strange, hesitant, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And I got it, because how the heck does a seatbelt just cut itself? It all started on a rainy autumn afternoon, one of those where the sky is so gray it seems like it will never clear up. My dad had gone to visit a friend in the countryside, a peaceful trip, about an hour's drive at most. He was always careful, the type who checks the car's oil every week and never, ever drives without a seatbelt. But that night when the phone rang, I already knew something was wrong before I even answered. It was the hospital. My dad had been in a serious accident. His car had veered off the road, hit a pole, and rolled twice before ending up in a ditch. The paramedic said it was a miracle he was alive. By the time we got to the hospital, he was already in surgery with 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and internal bleeding. The doctors weren't very hopeful. My mom couldn't stop crying. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was desperate. Then, after hours of waiting, one of the nurses came to talk to us. "He's stable, for now." that, for now, echoed in my head like a warning. It wasn't until the next day that the police came with the details of the accident. The car was destroyed, but one thing didn't make sense. The driver's seatbelt was cut, and not because of the impact. It was a clean, straight cut, as if someone had used a knife. And the strangest part? My dad always wore his seatbelt. Always. So how had he gotten out of the car if, theoretically, he should have been strapped in? When my dad finally woke up 2 days later, he was confused. The doctors said it was normal, that the trauma could affect his memory. But when I asked if he remembered the accident, he looked at me with eyes I had never seen before. "I remember," he said, his voice hoarse. "I remember everything." And then he told us. He said he was driving down that road when, out of nowhere, the steering wheel jerked to the right on its own, as if something had grabbed it. The car went off the road and he tried to brake, but it didn't help. At the moment of impact, he swore he saw a figure inside the car with him. A man sitting in the passenger seat. My dad said the man looked at him, smiled, and cut the seatbelt. "And then?" I asked, my throat dry. "And then he pulled me out of the car," my dad replied, his eyes filled with a certainty that gave me chills. "It was Uncle Richard. He was there. He saved me." I almost fell out of my chair. Uncle Richard died 10 years ago. My mom turned pale. "Are you saying you saw your uncle? His ghost?" My dad just nodded, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. And the way he described Uncle Richard, it was exact. The same brown overcoat he always wore, the same pocket watch we buried with him. Things my dad didn't even remember anymore. But at that moment he described them in detail. We fell silent, not knowing what to say. Because how do you react when someone tells you a ghost cut their seatbelt to save them? And then in the middle of that heavy silence, my dad said something that made my blood run cold. He told me something before he left. "What?" I asked, almost not wanting to know the answer. My dad looked at me and I saw a glint in his eyes that wasn't just relief. It was gratitude. He said it wasn't my time yet. And at that moment I realized something had changed. Because my dad had never believed in that stuff. But after that day, he never doubted again. And neither did I. Because something or someone had been in that car with him. And if it weren't for that, he wouldn't be here today. If it weren't for that cut seatbelt, he would have burned to death. That's what the firefighter said when we went to collect my dad's belongings from the junkyard. The car had caught fire minutes after the rescue. And the worst part? The fire started exactly where my dad would have been trapped if the seatbelt hadn't been cut. We went home with our heads full of questions. My dad was recovering, but he wouldn't stop talking about Uncle Richard. He said he dreamed about him every night, that he saw him in the corner of the room, always smiling, as if he were watching over him. My mom, who had always been skeptical, started lighting candles in the living room, just in case. And me, I was trying to understand how a ghost, if that's what it was, could have saved my dad from an accident that shouldn't have happened in the first place. Until one night I found out. I was home alone. My dad was still in the hospital for some final tests and my mom had gone to visit him. The wind was blowing hard against the windows, that eerie whistle that makes you look twice at the dark hallway. I was on the couch trying to distract myself with the TV when I heard it. 3 knocks on the door. Clear. Firm. As if someone was outside in a hurry. My heart raced. No one had said they were coming. I went to the door, looked through the peephole, and there was no one there. I took a deep breath, thought it was just my imagination, until I heard it again. 3 knocks. This time on the kitchen window. I almost fell backward. The kitchen is upstairs. There's no balcony. No way someone could knock there. But the sound was impossible to ignore. I went up the stairs slowly, my heart in my throat. And when I got there, the wall clock, that old pendulum clock that belonged to Uncle Richard, was stopped exactly at the time of my dad's accident. And the worst part? It hadn't worked in years. Then I felt it. That feeling of being watched, you know. That cold sensation that runs up your spine for no reason. I turned slowly and almost screamed. In the kitchen doorway for a second, just a second, I swear I saw a silhouette. Tall, wearing a brown overcoat, exactly as my dad had described. But when I blinked, it was gone. I ran to the phone, called my dad, my hands shaking. He answered weakly, still in pain. But when I told him, he didn't seem surprised. "He's just checking on us," he said calmly. Uncle Richard was always protective. The next day, my dad came home. The first thing he did was go to Uncle Richard's old room, which we used as a storage room, and pull out a dusty box from under the bed. Inside were a bunch of old things, photos, letters, and at the bottom, his pocket watch, the same one my dad saw in the car. "How did this end up here?" my mom asked, pale. "We buried it with him." My dad opened the watch. Inside was a yellowed photo of him and Uncle Richard, with a message on the back, "Until next time, kid." That's when it hit us. Uncle Richard knew. He knew that one day my dad would need him, and he was there. How the heck did he know? We'll never understand. But one thing I know. Since that day, we've left an empty chair at the dinner table, just in case. And sometimes when the house gets too quiet, I swear I hear the tinkling of a pocket watch, as if someone is always on duty. In the end, there are some things you just can't explain, right? If you've stuck with me this far, comment below. Ghost, just so I know who's on the team that faces these stories to the very last second. If you like this kind of tale, go ahead and subscribe, because there's a lot more eerie, strange, and sometimes even weirder stuff coming your way. And of course, leave a like, because if you've made it this far, it's because in some way this story gripped you too. And hey, don't stop here. There's a video right here waiting for you. Click and continue with me over there. Let's listen to more tales that, well, will mess with your head.